I'm about as real as they come.
All my beats tailored by Joe. House Digital.
Maserati Rick in Detroit, convertible bird in Miami. Graduated summa cum laude, strip club made a tsunami. Carlton Hines with the ball game, Grateful Edmonds with the snowflakes, Craig Pettis in the M-Town, Sal Magluta with the boat game, Falcone with the cocaine, like Freeway Ricky with the plug game, like Monster Cody in South Central, Larry Davis from close range.
The reputed leader of Las Vegas operations for the Chicago mob walked out of Cook County Jail this afternoon with his brother and two attorneys. 44-year-old Anthony Spilotro was released after posting $100,000 in cash, 10% of his $1 million bond. Earlier today in Cook County Criminal Court, Spilotro pleaded not guilty to the May 1962 murders of syndicate soldiers James Miraglia and William McCarthy. The victims of what has become known as the M&M slayings were found in the trunk of a car on the southwest side. Prosecutors say Spilotro beat and slashed the two after they allegedly killed three other underworld figures in Elmwood Park without permission from mob bosses. The key to Spilotro's indictment nearly 23 years after the fact was information provided by this man, Frank Collada, a mob member turned government informant.
We wouldn't have indicted this individual had we not had enough evidence. We feel we have enough evidence to bring this before a jury, for a jury to return verdicts of guilty on all the charges that he is charged with.
Spilotro's Las Vegas attorney, Oscar Goodman, said his client is being railroaded.
The only thing we're concerned about with Mr. Spilotro is a frame, and that's my only statement.
Spilotro, your attorney says you're being framed. They're setting you up. No comment.
Also today, 47-year-old Cook County Deputy Sheriff John Gattuso is free after posting the required 10% of his $800,000 bond. Gattuso and alleged mob soldier Jasper Campisi, who made bond a few days ago, are charged with the bungled gangland hit last month of Northside gambling boss Ken Tokyo Joe Ito. Some organized crime investigators this evening say they believe Gattuso, Campisi, and Spilotro are all marked men on the street. Gattuso and Campisi because they allegedly botched a syndicate hit. Spilotro because he faces a double murder trial that prosecutors say will end in a conviction. Chuck Gowdy, Channel 7 Eyewitness News.
So there was a lot of talk in 1983 about the possibility that Spilotro was on someone's hit list in the mob because he was out there publicly. Chicago outfit never liked people who were out there publicly and also leading Chicago crime rackets. It was far better for them to remain in the shadows and do their business privately, so to speak. So it was only a few years later, in 1986, that Anthony Spilotro was reported missing. Nobody was really too surprised, but there was an intense manhunt for several days in the western suburbs and around Chicago as his family was wondering what happened to Anthony Spilotro and his brother Michael, who was also reported missing at the time.
They're setting you up. No comment.
Perhaps that is a more appropriate question for Tony Spilotro this afternoon than it was 3 years ago. Then, the reputed manager of the mob's Las Vegas business had bonded out of Cook County Jail on a murder charge. Now, Spilotro and his brother Michael may be murder victims themselves, although they are officially listed as missing persons. 48-year-old Tony and 41-year-old Michael were last seen Saturday here at Michael's home in West Suburban Oak Park.
Last time they were seen, according to Ann, which is Michael's wife, was that they were seen about 2 p.m. on Saturday when they left the residence at 1102 South Maple. She has not seen or heard from them since.
Where were they going?
She did not indicate where they were going. Didn't know that they'd be out and they'd be back later.
They never returned, but the car they left in was found last night in the parking lot of this Schiller Park motel. A passing policeman noticed the 1986 Lincoln Mark 7, which had also been listed as missing. The FBI found no clues in the car, only a single golf club in the trunk, a driver, a couple of jackets in the back seat, a garage door opener, and a nickel on the front console. We found a cassette still in the dashboard tape player, the pre-recorded tape called James Bond 007. 13 originals.
Bloodstains, weapons, anything unusual?
Nothing unusual that we can determine at this time.
What does that say to you? I mean, these people have just vanished?
Well, this time they're still missing. We don't know what happened to them. The car was parked out there. They could have certainly parked it. Somebody else could have certainly parked it. We have no knowledge of who parked the car there.
Tony Spilotro's wife, Nancy, seemed very surprised that the car was found in this lot just 5 minutes from O'Hare Airport. I spoke with Nancy Spilotro by phone at the family's home in Las Vegas. She would not say why she was concerned about the car's proximity to O'Hare, but the airport has traditionally been a favorite dumping spot for murdered mobsters. The airport might also be an easy place by which Spilotro would leave the country. But Nancy Spilotro told me she has not heard from her husband. She has no idea where he is. She has no idea what happened to him.
I just find it most unlikely. Most unlikely. I prefer to think that they're out on a frolic and that they'll come walking home tonight, perhaps a little inebriated, and they'll have half the family angry at them. That is, their family angry at them. And they'll probably be facing divorce proceedings by tomorrow. That's what I prefer to think.
Tony Spilotro, once considered an heir to the crime syndicate throne in Chicago, has as of late been a liability, according to mafia observers. He is to be retried in Las Vegas beginning Monday for allegedly masterminding a burglary ring called the Hole-in-the-Wall Gang. He is still under federal indictment for his alleged role in outfit-operated casino skimming in Las Vegas. His brother, who manages this West Side restaurant and is a part-time actor, was charged in the Vegas burglary ring, but the case was dropped. He is currently under indictment on federal extortion charges, all of which leads Oak Park investigators to speculate that the Spilotros are being kept quiet by the mob's method of choice: murder.
The possibility does exist, naturally, considering the background of both individuals.
The Spilotro name was one of the best-known crime syndicate names in Chicago history. And not only Tony Spilotro, but his brother Michael. But really, Tony Spilotro was known as the man out in Las Vegas. Spilotro was only 5 feet 5 inches tall and 150 pounds, but he was considered to be a crime syndicate heavyweight. And when he came home that summer in 1986 to report for a mob sit-down, as they called it, basically a disciplinary hearing to find out what in the world was happening out in Las Vegas, Spilotro was no longer calling the shots. It was his upper crust managers in the Chicago mob. They wanted to know what Spilotro was doing and why, and they knew that it was the end of the road for Tony Spilotro. And when he was found in a cornfield with his brother buried that day in 1986, even though at the time there weren't nearly as many television stations or news organizations in Chicago, it was an hour south into northwest Indiana, and there were hundreds of reporters and news crews represented out there that day when the bodies were found.
Well, there were two. I got there after the first, first was already out, and the second one was deep, over my head, I would say.
2 men?
I believe. I don't want to say for sure.
Yeah. It looked like they had been shot?
I can't say.
Were they in suits?
No.
No.
Naked?
Leisure clothes?
No. It was very hard to tell. They'd been in the ground.
About 3 foot down, we ran into the first body. Of course,
State Wildlife Division Supervisor Dick Hudson and a friend discovered the bodies last night. A farmer who leases this state land just north of Morocco, Indiana, had called them to say it looked like something had been buried near the edge of his new corn crop. After a little digging, Hudson made the grisly find.
We hit him somewhere along in the side. I told Dylan, hey, this don't look like any animal skin I've ever seen unless it's human. And we dug around a little bit till we came to his skivvies or his underwear, and we decided that was far enough, and we left.
As has been the case in many mafia hits, both victims were only wearing their underwear. Sources say that shows they now may hide nothing. Indiana State Police tonight say one Spilotro had on cotton shorts, the other exotic nylon see-through underwear. Their clothes have not been found.
I think you'd have to say, after viewing the crime scene, that in certain aspects of the double homicide were botched by the assassins or by the murderers. The depth of the hole goes at least 5 feet. It's very, very clear to us from a law enforcement perspective that the persons responsible for this left the scene of the crime with the anticipation that the remains would not ever be found.
Anthony Little Tony Spilotro and his brother Michael were not found for 9 days. The only sign of the pair was their Lincoln Mark 7 automobile, found parked in a motel parking lot near O'Hare Field. Federal agents tonight believe the Spilotros were driven to Indiana in this car, which is believed to have been torched after the brothers were buried. The burned-out automobile was found about 2 miles due west of the gravesite, right down there. The car roughly halfway to a farm, reportedly once owned by jailed Chicago godfather Joseph Joey O'Brien Iupa. Could it be that the Spilatros were driven down here believing they were to meet with fellow mobsters at Iupa's secluded rural home?
I would have to say yes, it does pique our interest, yes.
He still owns that farm? Does he still own that farm?
I have no further questions about Mr. Iupa. Thank you.
Even though the FBI was processing an active crime scene in that cornfield back in 1986, they really developed very few clues and made no immediate arrests. In fact, to this day, no one has ever been brought to justice specifically for the murders of Anthony and Michael Spilotro. There have been insinuations in various court cases over the years as to who was responsible, believed to be a team of relatively high-ranking mafia members in Chicago who put together a group of people one afternoon and lured the Spilatros to a home in Bensonville, and according to at least one witness who was involved in the beatings, or claimed to be, took them into the basement and essentially beat them to death there, and then drove them down to Indiana, where they were then buried in this cornfield, only to be found a few days later by a farmer.
The battered remains of Anthony and Michael Spilotro arrived by hearse tonight here at the Salerno Funeral Home on the far west side. The bodies of the gangland victims left Indiana University Medical Center here in Indianapolis late this afternoon following completion of autopsies. Tonight, the 5-foot deep hole where the Spilotros were temporarily buried has been filled in, while Indiana State Police detectives poked through areas bordering the cornfield looking for
years
clues.
ago today, a grim discovery in an Indiana cornfield marked the end of an era for organized crime in Las Vegas. Tony Spilotro, the longtime rackets boss of Las Vegas, was found murdered alongside with his brother Michael.
The slayings weren't solved for another 21 years. The I-Team's George Knapp covered Spilotro during the zenith of mob influence, and he joins us now with a look back. It seems like people who were here remember where they were that day.
Yeah,
Dave, remember?
That was a big story.
Tough Tony Spilotro was one of the most feared mobsters to ever land in Las Vegas. Law enforcement suspected him in as many as 26 murders. The story of Spilotro and his crew was fictionalized in the movie Casino. The true version of his 1986 murder wasn't revealed until a sensational trial more than 2 decades later.
We're worried about.
You guys got to cut it out. I'm warning you now, all right?
A few words from Tony Spilotro were usually enough to stop people in their tracks. He was the undisputed king of street rackets in Las Vegas in the 70s and 80s. Spilotro earned his ferocious reputation as an enforcer on the mean streets of Chicago and was sent by outfit bosses to Las Vegas, an ambassador of sorts, where his primary job was to quietly protect the skim, millions of dollars being stolen from mob-controlled casinos. But Spilotro and his crew didn't keep a low profile for long.
As in the case of Tony Spilotro, the hole-in-the-wall gang, the robberies and the burglaries, the loan sharking and so on that came with it, and they had free rein to do whatever they wanted to do as long as it didn't create too much notoriety.
Attorney Jeff Silver, back then part of the Gaming Control Board, was targeted for murder after helping to lead the investigation of the skimming operation. When Spilotro's burglary crew, the notorious hole-in-the-wall gang, was busted during a heist, the writing was on the wall. Prosecutors convinced one member, Frank Collada, to become a government witness, admitting to murders and other crimes.
And I shot him again.
In June 1986, Spilotro was lured back to Chicago, supposedly with the promise that he would be promoted and that his brother Michael would become a made man. The two men were suspicious but drove away to a meeting. They never returned. In the movie Casino, the Spilotro brothers were beaten with baseball bats in a cornfield, then buried while still alive. The real story is different. It all came spilling out in 2007 when 14 mob figures went on trial in Chicago, accused of 18 murders, including the Spilotros. The FBI's Operation Family Secrets relied on testimony from key mob figures. One defendant, Joey the Clown Lombardo, had been Spilotro's boss. Admitted hitman Frank Collada emerged from the Witness Protection Program in 2007 and gave his first interview to the I-Team. We asked his opinion about who okayed the Spilotro murders.
Joe Lombardo.
Well, he was Tony's boss and he was my boss.
Meaning you guys reported directly to him?
Oh, Tony did. I reported to Tony. So Joe relayed the messages to Tony. And do I think that Joe Lombardo was involved in it? I think that they would have to go to him for an okay on it, yes.
Lombardo and 4 other mobsters were convicted in the trial. According to witnesses who participated in the slayings, the Spilotros met their end in the basement of a home in the suburb of Bensonville. They were beaten and strangled, then the bodies driven to Indiana for burial. 9 days later, a farmer found the grave. DNA from the crime scene helped build the case 21 years later. Spilotro's longtime lawyer, Oscar Goodman, who went on to become mayor of Las Vegas, successfully defended Tough Tony in multiple cases and remembers a different guy than the feared killer.
Well, we spent so much time together, George. I couldn't help but having that kind of relationship. I must have represented Tony on 4 or 5 murder cases. I represented him on racketeering cases, on black book cases. Only the good in Tony Spilotro. You know, I heard the FBI screaming and yelling that he killed 26 different people. And the only thing I could say to that is shame on them. If he killed 26 people, they should have put him in jail for a day. They didn't even do that.
The murder of the Spilotros was a huge story back in 1986, in part because it was the last time the mafia had that large of a presence on the streets of Las Vegas. In the years that followed, other mobsters tried to fill those shoes, but no one came close. And the convictions in the family secrets case pretty much gutted what was left of the Chicago hierarchy, of course.
Hole in the wall gang.
Yeah. Still wince when I see some of those images. It's
quite
just
an era.
Like, pretty brutal. Yeah, thanks, George.
All right, thanks, George.
Yo, we back. It's your boy Popalot. Mobb ties. We on our way to the Shy with it. All my niggas from the Shy, y'all niggas get in the comment box. Let it be known, real fucking G shit. But we also gonna shoot to Las Vegas and do some real mob-like shit. So my niggas from Vegas get in the comment box. Let it be known. Now the guy that we gonna be covering today is gonna be a guy by the name of Tony Spilotro. Some people know him as the Ant. Some people know him as Tough Tony. But I brought him to y'all because he's Nicky from Casino. So anybody that ever seen Casino, remember lines like, "It was so fucking funny, I'm a clown to you." Or you might remember where he had the gang that was busting holes through the wall and knocking out shit. And that's going to be a gang by the name of the Hole in the Wall gang. Pretty much, a little bit about Tony was, he was an enforcer for the Chicago mob. They say he murdered in upwards of 25 people. He was sent to Las Vegas. The movie pretty much, this is one case where it almost looked like the movie almost hit it like to a nail. Usually it's always like we like questioning what the movie covered, but with this shit right here, this shit is almost exact to the T. He was sent to Vegas. His dudes got knocked off. One of his dudes, or I guess his whole crew got knocked off with the Hole in the Wall gang. One of them testified that came back to bite him. He went back to Chicago at some point in time under the impression that he was going to be promoted and his brother was going to be made a made man. What ended up happening, they ended up killing him just like the movie depicted. Only difference was, and it wasn't on a cornfield where they beat him. He ended up on a field with farmers, but I want to say that they said that the beating happened in a basement and they drove him to Indiana where they disposed of the body. So yeah, this ain't no halfway mob shit. It's some real mob shit. I'm gonna let y'all get into a little bit more of the details of how he got in the game. If y'all want to know more, y'all make sure y'all follow me on Instagram, Twitter, POP_A_LOT. Y'all make sure y'all hit the bell so y'all know when this real trill shit dropping. Man, it's your boy Popalot with it. Mobb ties.
Anthony John Spilotro.